7 o'clock. I'm calling this Germantown School District Board of Education to order. Please stand if you're able and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Official meeting notification, Dr. Reuter.
Public notice of all meetings has been given by communication from the superintendent's office to the public, to those news media who have requested such notices, and to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Northwest Now, Express News, and West Bend Daily News. Public notice has also been posted in schools throughout the district and on the Germantown School District website, as well as cable access channel 96.
Thank you. Item B, roll call.
Medved?
Here.
Reineman?
Here.
Myself, I am here. Soderberg?
Here.
Loth?
Here.
Ewert?
Here.
Pollock?
Here.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Item 3, reports. Student representative report. Abby Bruss, come on down. Welcome.
Hello, good evening. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm here to give the report on the 6 schools in the district. Starting off with Amy Bell. The staff and students at Amy Bell just finished up their first full week of school. The students are getting down all the routines and expectations that help the school days run smoothly. Teachers have started their first academic units, and students have been participating in some assessments so the staff can better understand where they are in their learning. This year, we will continue to spend time focusing on character education as a school. We will work on skill building in these areas within our classroom and as a school community during our monthly Bell Fests. Our theme this year is See the Good, Be the Good. The staff can't wait to have a great full year of learning. The County Line crew is back. The students and staff have had a great first few weeks of school. Relationships are being formed, routines are being established, learning is occurring, memorable moments are happening every day. The PTA has started putting on activities for the students. The students are currently learning about healthy lifestyles. Over 4 weeks, 2 this fall and 2 in the spring, students will complete 150 minutes of walking or running to complete a half marathon or 300 minutes for a full marathon. PTA members and parent volunteers will be at recess handing out popsicle sticks to track their minutes. The students and staff and parents are excited to see what will happen at this year's marathon. The staff at MacArthur are super excited to have the students back in the building. Every month, students will have a new value word that our scholars at MacArthur are working on as part of our Character Strong program. We talk about this during our assembly time and as part of our Monday videos that are shared school-wide. The students continue learning about the value word within their classroom. MacArthur will focus on a specific area in the school as how to teach the students how to practice the value word within their lives. This month, they are learning on the word respect. They're really focusing on respect in the lunchroom. The students are also very busy taking different benchmark assessments. These assessments provide the staff with important information regarding each child's academic achievements and progress, thus allowing them to create individual learning opportunities for all students. The students and staff at Rockfield are happy to be back and learning again. The 4K has been a wonderful addition to our school. We also had a successful kickoff with reviewing our school expectations and building a community. The school culminated the first weeks with a relationship rodeo. Our second week of school, we held the school-wide respect assembly. Additionally, we have started our Rockfield Marathon that the PTA supports during lunch recess. Thankfully, we've had a number of parent volunteers keeping track of students' laps for the 2 weeks during recess. The students look forward to seeing what their goals for running and getting exercise in every day. Over at Kennedy Middle School, it's in full swing. The students have started to find their routine, the learning has begun, the relationships have evolved, and it is looking like a start to the great school year. The students and staff are getting busy with all the different activities beginning, including but not limited to Best Buddies, Key Club, basketball, Student Council, and Writers Club. The staff reminds the students to make it a great day, and the choice is theirs. Germantown High School students and staff have had a successful start to their school year. The upperclassmen have been extremely welcoming to the freshmen as they have settled into their new school. The freshman activities have started to calm down and the workload is starting to pick up for all students. Many fall sports began in mid-August and are still working hard to achieve their goals at the end of the season. Currently, high schoolers are upping their school spirit for homecoming week. The Student Council and administration has planned a week full of fun events and activities leading up to the dance this Saturday night. That's everything.
Thank you. Any questions? I would just like to comment, it was nice to have this ahead of time, because there's a lot of information that you present, and it's a lot to digest, so it's very helpful to have this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B, 2022 Summer School Report. Mr. Masick.
Good evening. Well, that's on. I know that you had an opportunity to take a look at the report, so I just want to highlight a couple key pieces of the report for you and then give you an opportunity to ask any questions if you have them. So you'll notice on the first page, one of the things that I'd like to highlight is the enrollment that you see from 2020-21 to the 21-22 school year. You'll notice that in terms of our K-8 summer school programming, the number of students who are enrolled in it did not really decrease all that much. At the beginning of summer, there was some calculations that were done to determine what classes would be most efficient to run. And when those calculations were done, there were some reductions that took place. The vast majority of the reductions that took place happened at the K-8 level, but you'll notice that the overall enrollment in K-8 summer school did not really decrease from the previous summer. On page 2, there's some information there that was requested by the board. One of the questions that was asked were how many of our students took classes for credit recovery and then how much of that was actually recovered. So there was 52 students who took classes for credit recovery and 47 of those students recovered credit during the summer. The other piece that the board asked for was kind of a summary of the budget in terms of our summer school spending. Although the total expenses aren't all-inclusive because there are some things that are missing from that, like facilities in our sub-budget that goes in there, but you can get an idea of what the total expense was. So roughly, we had $142,000 worth of expenses, and then we're able to estimate our state aid based on the number of students and the number of minutes attended. So our estimate is that in terms of the balancing from state aid, we would get about $292,000. Finally, on the back page, you can see what happened to our courses offered over time. So that goes to what I spoke to before, where there were some sections that were eliminated. There were a total of 76 sections that were eliminated at the start of summer. That wasn't class offerings. So there were classes that ran up to 3 times in a session or over multiple sessions. So some of those sections were combined, and kids didn't necessarily get the number 1 session that they signed up for, but we combined them. So 76 sections were reduced, and that resulted in 19 of our class offerings being removed from our summer program. But again, the vast majority of that was at the K-8 level, and there wasn't an overall reduction in the number of kids who were attending summer school. So then in terms of future considerations, casting forward, I think one of the things that we could take a look at is the scheduling structure that we have for summer school to make sure that it is most beneficial for our families in terms of their utilization. And then the second piece would be to continue to go forward with taking a look at those caps for classes to make sure that when we are running a class that we're doing it in the best interest of our summer school program. And then the last piece that I would offer in terms of a future consideration would be for us to continue to collect data on utilization for our classes. So monitoring the data over time to take a look at what classes are being offered and then what classes our families are interested in taking.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, good update. I appreciate especially the budget summary. I know that's one thing that I asked for.
You talked about credit recovery. I'm assuming that's at the high school?
That's
school
correct.
level?
Yep.
We do have some students that may have fallen behind during the pandemic, the in-person, not in-person learning. Did families take an opportunity to catch up with their students? Did we find that was the case?
So the vast majority of that programming takes place at the K-8 level. So we have like math boosters and literacy boosters that are offered. Those aren't one of our higher utilized classes, so those weren't things that our families were asking for, but that is something that we can look forward to in the next summer term. There's ways that we can describe that to families in terms of what they're looking for in their programming. A lot of times those classes are offered sort of to build skills that might be lacking, whereas some of our families might be looking at extensions for literacy activities. So there are types of literacy programs that we could offer that are more interest-based. So if you've got students who are interested in fantasy or something like that, there's particular genres of literacy that we could study, or types of writing, so creative writing, that we could offer to see if more of our students would be interested in taking those. And then using the same kind of formula that we used before, if we don't have a large number of students who sign up for it, then we don't have to offer that class during the term.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you much. Item 4, citizen comments. We have several people tonight.
We have Mr. Lamb, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one, sorry. Item C, seclusion and restraint report. Mr. Lamb.
Thank you. In compliance with Wisconsin Act 118, I'm providing a summary of incidents of seclusion and restraint for the 2021-2022 school year. And this is the same information that does get reported to DPI during December of every year for public access. And we have a few students who are placed in programs outside of the district, and within those programs there were 2 students who, and I'll go through school by school here like I typically do. For those students, there were 2 students for whom there were 6 incidents of seclusion and 7 incidents of restraint. And then going through our schools, starting with elementary, Amy Bell had 4 incidents of seclusion involving 1 student with a disability, and 16 incidents of restraint involving 3 students with disabilities. County Line had 13 incidents of seclusion involving 1 student with a disability, and 7 incidents of restraint involving 1 student with a disability. MacArthur had no incidents of seclusion or restraint. Rockfield had 4 incidents of seclusion involving 2 students with disabilities, and 11 incidents of restraint involving 2 students with disabilities. And then the middle school and high school did not have any incidents of seclusion or restraint last year. And each year, we do look at those numbers and analyze what we can do differently moving into the following years. We've done some in-servicing with our staff for analyzing behavior and planning more strategically around the behavior. As is required by law, there's a debrief session after every incident where teams come together and talk through what went well, what can be improved upon should subsequent incidents occur. We do continue to provide training for our staff on de-escalation techniques, and including this year, just given the number of staff that have turned over from year to year, we offered a training during the in-service week for this year, so even our new staff to us had the opportunity to participate in that training. And then I always want to emphasize that this is a last resort when safety is jeopardized, and staff using the techniques are properly trained to do so. And for every student who was involved in either an incident of seclusion or restraint, their parents have been made aware of that incident in detail.
Okay, any questions?
Do we look at this data and compare it to other schools with similar demographics to see where we might be having more or less and kind of compare in that direction?
We do have general conversations across districts as I have conversations with other directors. As far as actually looking at specific numbers, I haven't gone into that level of detail. A lot of the incidents are just situationally specific, and it can be difficult to compare actual numbers, but what we do talk through are what we can do in response to the numbers that we have.
How do you see those comparing so far, just from that type of conversation that you have been having? Does it seem like we're inundated with more, less, about the same?
I think about the same, and it ebbs and flows, from one year to the next, even within our own numbers in our own buildings.
Sure.
Same is true across districts.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 4 this time, citizen comments. We have several people. We'll start with Lisa Van Zummeren. How'd I do?
Hi there, I'm Lisa Van Zummeren. I'm a teacher at KMS, and I'm here tonight representing the GEA. In light of the fact that the district ended the 2021-22 fiscal school year with a surplus of over $958,000, we, the GEA, find it extremely disappointing and hurtful that the district chose not to provide its teachers with a cost of living pay increase. If you have any questions, let me know. I will try to answer them. If I can't, I will take it back to the GEA leadership for follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Hepley. And on deck is Sarah Larson. Welcome.
Good evening, Scott Heffley, W159 and 10514 Old Farm Road, Germantown. Been a while since I was here visiting. Heard the budget was balanced. You know what I'm all about that. You guys know that by now, right? So congratulations to Brittany and her team and you guys for making that happen. I'm really here tonight to speak about the school security officer. I was made aware that we were looking into it. Never heard of it before, didn't know a lot about it, so I just tried to read on. I know you've had a couple meetings. I tried to read the minutes. I guess it's a new thing. I don't know that we had a need before. I remember last year I was saying, why do we need a dean of students at the school when we never had one before and our high school was down 100 students? We ended up funding it anyways. I always heard it was used to help with discipline. Okay, that's fine. You guys are the one in charge, but I'm very confused about this, okay? At first I was kind of pissed off about it, all right? We have the best law enforcement in this village, in the county. I don't care what anyone says. I'll defend them against anyone. So I don't know what we're doing here. I mean, I don't know what message we're sending. Are we saying that our police can't keep our schools safe? That's a horrible message to send. I don't know that we want to do that. What about our SROs, who actually we help both fund, and they are highly trained people. You guys have probably met them. Highly trained. They've been trained in everything. They can handle anything. So why do we need the school security officers? Then I hear they might be carrying guns, okay? Because they're retired law enforcement. I mean, I don't get all this. So maybe you guys can provide some background in this. Have you had in-depth conversations with the person we have in charge of the village security, which is the chief of police? Have you had in-depth discussions? Before you do this, I think you should do that, you know? Before we ask for exemptions from the state legislature, I think you should have Dan Canoto come and talk to you guys. I mean, these are people that represent us. So I haven't seen them and I haven't heard about them and I haven't read any minutes on them, so I hope they're being talked to about this. The way I look at it is, I mean, you can look at it, okay? But I don't know if it's a school board's ultimate purpose to create a taxpayer-funded private security team, which is how I look at this, because they're not officers of the police department. And we've never had that before. I don't know that we have a need for that. I feel that Germantown is safe. My kids both went through the district. They never said, hey, I felt unsafe at school, ever. I think our kids are safe. So the job we have, or you have as school board, is to oversee the education of the kids. And I understand security is important, safety is important. What about our police department? Get them involved. If you think our schools need more security, we have a resolution, and that would be to add an SRO. Add another SRO. If you guys want more security, add a SRO. Make it something where you work with the village and both fund it like you do with middle school and high school. Do it that way. Then you have the police department running the security of the village, okay? So if you go down this path, what are some issues to that? One is chain of command. I know Trustee Ewert knows all about chain of command. In police departments, there's a chain of command, okay? Usually unbroken, right? What chain of command will be involved if you have these school security officers? They're not going to be under the police department that I know of, not what I read, okay? Who has jurisdiction if something happens? Is the police chief allowed to put those officers as he sees fit, use them as resources? They don't report to him. I guess they report to you guys from what I'm reading, unless I'm wrong. That's fine. But that could be a problem, right? I heard them, you're looking to get people who can carry weapons, but we have gun-free school zones. We're looking for exemptions to that. I don't know. has your school attorney reviewed this idea, okay? Because anytime you add different layers of security to a situation, if there is an incident, there's liability involved. I'm not a law enforcement expert. We have one up there. I know, Mr. Soderberg, you know a lot about these types of things. I'm concerned that we're bringing in a can of worms if something does happen. I'm all for security. I just think it should be run through the police department. And what I'll end with is, I looked up HR 218, interesting quote. Individuals carrying under LEOSA and HR 218 are carrying under federal law and so must follow federal laws and federal agency policies that restrict the carrying of concealed firearms in certain federal buildings and lands and on airplanes. They must also follow the Gun-Free School Zone Act and cannot carry a firearm within 1,000 feet of elementary or secondary schools. Not my words from the government. Although Gun-Free School Zone Act authorizes on-duty law enforcement officers to carry firearms in such circumstances, off-duty and retired law enforcement officers are restricted from doing so unless they have a firearms license issued from the state in which they reside, which is the only state where it applies. Direct quote from the legislation. So, look into it. It seems like we're pushing it fast. There's no rush to do this, okay? We don't need this next week. Take your time, do it right, get the people involved that provide safety in the village, and see where it ends up. We don't need to do this next week. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah Larson. Welcome.
Good evening, Sarah Larson, Butternut Road in Germantown. Just wanted to say thank you for the various measures that you're exploring in attempting to keep the children safe. I like some of the out-of-the-box thinking on it, especially if we can get some of the technology to even prevent them from coming into the building but being detected outside. Very important. The other thing is, thank you to the policy committee for your diligence in reviewing the policies that will be talked about tonight. I think that too is another step in keeping our children safe, as well as remaining local control and parental control for what's best for our children. As we know, there's that national push for the over-sexualization of children and targeting them for grooming by people that they're supposed to trust. I think when you look at some of the educational materials, it really is forcing teachers into that role of, whether it's conscious or unconsciously, grooming our children. And so I really appreciate your efforts on this, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 5, approval of the minutes, August 29th, 2022, Board of Education, August 29th, 2022, closed session, and September 12th, 2022, closed session. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve August 29th, 2022 Board of Education meeting, August 29th, 2022 closed session, September 12th, 2022 closed session.
Second.
Heidemann with a motion and Barney with a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Item 6, Building Committee. Mr. Pollock.
Yes, thank you. We met on September 12th. There were a few items that we did work our way through. First off, it was our first meeting with Mr. Lord as our new Building and Grounds Director, so we welcomed him. We also got an update from Frank regarding the walkthrough that he did and the list that he created regarding all the different maintenance items, improvements, et cetera. That obviously is a work in progress. We also briefly talked about the 5-year capital improvement plan, so we're going to have a little discussion on that since it was not expressly written in the agenda that there could be action on it. We tabled that item and are going to bring it forward this evening. Also, we spoke a little bit about planning for a board, principal, administrative staff, facility walkthrough in each one of the buildings. That more details will come out when appropriate, when we work through it, but This won't be just a board and leadership session. We're going to house it underneath the building committee. We'll give proper notice and such, but it'll actually be open to the public to attend as well, so that they'll be able to see some things, get some information, and see what we need to work on, but also see the great things that we currently have. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lord to give us an update or give us a description of the capital improvement plan that he's already presented, but are coming forward today.
Yes, so it's essentially the exact same plan that I brought to the Buildings Committee, but just to do a quick run over, this is created to identify and plan for any larger capital improvement projects that essentially create a space of safety, efficiency, and things on schedule as far as term of life when it comes to materials in the building. So within the time period that I've been here, I have done my best to identify the top needs that are or should be within the 5 years, but I also used some of the prior planning and scheduling, such as roofs and asphalt pavement scheduling, to work within this document, because those things, they don't change. That's something that you should really try and stick with. So unless I see otherwise, again, not to get off topic, but unless I see otherwise with roofs that are much worse than what they were stated and when they were replaced, all of those schedules will stay the same. That doesn't mean that they have to be done on that year, but that is the year that they are planned for. So this capital improvement plan is an ongoing plan. It's something that can change depending on any major breakdowns or anything else that I might identify or someone else identifies within a large storm or really any act of God, I guess, that would set precedence to a different project. So these numbers that are within the capital improvement plan are estimated costs, very rough estimated costs. In this day and age, as of right now, it's difficult to estimate the material costs and turnarounds and things of that nature. So I did my best with those. As we get closer to the year of, I just want to state that we will be getting hard numbers for all of the projects, and I will take each one as if we are planning for that year, and then I will come back to the board as needed to keep it up to date and everybody abreast. So the numbers, they're not, I guess I'm not even going to talk about numbers. They're numbers, but they are within the honest ballpark. So yeah, just to do a quick run through on it. The first page, this is something that I've used in the past as far as a needs rating and classifications rating. This helps prioritize not only myself. This is something that as we get closer to times and things within different facilities and schools, we would send something along this out to, let's just say 10 to 12 staff members, including principals and all the way down, just to get their rating of it. That doesn't mean that that's the route that we're going to go, but it gives myself and everyone else working on these and the community kind of what we really should be directing the projects towards outside of the lifespan of a turnover. So if they're seeing things, again, in the classrooms or within an entire wing of a gymnasium is a pretty popular one, just not functional. I could go in there and say the wood floor is in great shape, the air is moving, it's a great building. Outside of that, when it comes to FIAD and different extracurricular activities, obviously that's when you can really start to, they can really point out, well, what's just not working with the current facility we have. So that usually falls within that capital improvement and a renovation. So just an example of that, but it's worked out well. I use it for everything. It just helps, again, schedule, prioritize, and get things kind of in a line so you can kind of see what you're working on inside, outside, whether it's failing, whether it's a safety issue, a preventative project, or if it pertains, again, more towards co-curricular athletics activities or just the all-around working environment of a facility and its grounds, excuse me. As of right now, I guess just running through them, I don't know, do you want me to go through every project, or
Please don't.
just a quick skirt?
I don't, yeah, you can just summarize.
Sure, okay.
Because, I mean, ultimately, what I would ask is assuming that the board, if the board does approve the plan, that we make it available for public review and make sure that we include your different ratings and items and classifications.
Sure.
'Cause personally, I like it because it kind of lays things out and gives that backlog of work that needs to be done. And also, I think in some ways, depending on who looks at it, I think some folks might have their eyes pop out a little bit with
Sure.
regards to what it takes to maintain the facilities. So.
Definitely. And it does give that kind of inner justification to some projects that someone might not know, because frankly, who cares about a roof unless you're dealing with a roof, you know? So, that's always a good way for me to get a roof through. So yeah, a lot of the projects within the buildings, I'm just gonna say, a lot of them typically will revolve around the asphalt and the grounds, roofs, building envelope, pavements, things of that nature, but outside of that, the HVAC is usually a big one. You know, obviously, we do have some schools that are not finished or fully equipped with HVAC. Not extremely uncommon, but it is definitely something that you want to work towards. It is a great capital improvement, and I think anybody within that building will agree. So outside of that, I don't have anything major as far as projects to talk about this year, but I did want to mention that I think it was asked or inquired about adding totals towards the ends for the 5 years, just to kind of get an idea on what we're looking at. Again, it is the estimated cost, but as you can see, most of them kind of fit within, between the levy and budget, what we're looking at. So I'm hoping that's exactly kind of what we're gearing towards. Yeah, I think that's all I have for it. Unless there's any other questions that.
Mr. Seibert?
Hey, Frank. I'm Bob.
Hi there.
Welcome to the team. I think you're doing a great job, and this is a perfect example of why I say that.
Thank you.
A couple comments. Amy Bell, first day of school when the board was visiting all the schools, I went to Amy Bell, and I talked to the phys ed teacher, and he showed me his gym floor. Many spots of the bubbling, and I really don't know what the going forward plan is, but if it's not to get it fixed relatively soon, and not just cut and put some glue down and put some weight on it, but possibly a full replacement, you may want to consider putting that on here, depending on what the resolution is, so.
Definitely.
And I was pleased to see on both County Line and MAC, you're addressing the courtyard revamp. I think that's wonderful. It's great space there that we could be using for outdoor learning. It's wonderful. But I would just say that if you're going to spend or identify some dollars for both of those schools, you may want to identify some dollars, and I'm just one board member, for Germantown, even though there's a plan to get outside funding for that. If we're spending district dollars for both County Line and MAC, we probably should be spending district dollars for Germantown as well, Germantown High School. And last but not least, for Germantown High School, I just want to make you aware, in case you're not, you've got soccer field drainage reconstruction for $150,000. You may want to knock on Ms. Nerdle's door, because there is a outdoor, I forgot what the term is, an outdoor sports venue master plan that the board looked at a couple years ago. We didn't take any action on, we were just identifying dollars for it. But the Reader's Digest version is that we've got 2 high school softball fields over at Kennedy that, based on board action, we could sell that land maybe to the village and use those dollars to fund improvements over at the high school, put the soccer field over at the football field, astroturf it, and put 2 turf fields where the soccer field is. And then you could probably avoid that $150,000 in spend. That's way down the road, but it may be worth something to revisit and knock on her door to say, hey, is this a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Definitely. No, that's great to know. I was not aware of that, so that's still, I'm learning every day. with
Oh,
things
no,
like that.
and you're doing great. I just want to make you aware of that.
No, thank you very much.
And for clarification purposes, Bob, when you're talking about Germantown, you're talking about the greenhouse at the high school?
Yes,
Okay.
right.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for this. I like the way you presented the report and you give us the good information. And I also like to give a shout out to Brittany. I think having the budget, I know I've been on building committee for several years, so I've been, responsible for maintaining these buildings for a long time. And I think we've done a pretty good job over the years. In our referendum, we spent substantial dollars to upgrade our facilities and to maintain our facilities. So we were able to delay some cost in, rehabbing the facilities for several years. But I see in the budget now, we're increasing each year going forward so that we don't get caught behind down the road. So I appreciate the work that's being done and appreciate, that we actually are going to budget properly to not let our facilities fall apart.
Yep.
Great news.
Definitely.
Just wanted to say I appreciate that you broke down by year the project projections and then the projected budget for them. I know when we were having the meeting, I kind of was doing some quick math and realized the first year it was a negative, but it appears the next 4 years are all positive with cash. So if we have to roll things over or add or subtract, like you said, cost is going up on everything. It's nice to see that projection. I was a little worrisome all 5 years would play out that way.
Sure.
So it was nice to see that that's not the case.
Definitely.
On another note, just to clarify, this is a tentative plan. This isn't written in stone. If things change, if things come up, we have flexibility here.
Correct.
So we're approving a tentative, master plan, but we're not stuck in stone here.
Definitely,
Okay.
110%. Yeah, it's an ongoing, obviously not a change weekly, but it's something that, these larger projects come up, as the year goes on and things get used more and things happen. So absolutely ongoing and, because you want to direct your best attention to your most important capital at that time, so.
And we know we have a schedule for depletion of life, but that doesn't always work in our favor, so
Right.
we have to be
Absolutely.
flexible.
Unfortunately.
Very good.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Lowe.
I could mention it in finance, but I'll mention it now. Since ESSER dollars have been identified to be used as indoor air quality improvements, I see that as air conditioning and UV air filters in those wings that do not have air conditioning. So I'd really like to see the wings and sections of buildings that do not have air conditioning quite soon, actually, because I think the availability of ESSER dollars will come, in about a year or so for that. So I wouldn't waste any time on those sections of buildings that don't have AC. I don't know how it's best to get a start on that, but maybe building principals, I'm sure they know which sections don't have AC.
Yeah, between actually some of the, most of the areas that are covered under the same programming. So that kind of helps segregate the areas that you'll see. It's a full building map, but then you'll just kind of have the black space. Those are typically, now obviously I would confirm and look further in, but it gives me a good starting point. We were talking about it, Brittany and I, recently, last week-ish. And I was just glancing over all the facilities just through the train program. And just kind of gauging it essentially, but I will absolutely start working on that in greater detail.
And Frank, based on Mike's comments on air conditioning, when we were touring the schools, I think we toured one school at Mac, that they were really, really thinking outside the box for a special needs kiddo. And PTA, I think, funded a standalone air conditioning unit that I think they purchased from Home Depot. And I applaud folks on donating items like that. But that could be an opportunity for us to take a risk-based approach. We're our highest risk for things like that. And we work with the schools and we fund those things. And we could do that probably right away, so.
Okay, that's great, okay. Yeah, I was talking and working with Rob quite a bit actually for projecting potential futures. I think there was even a thought process of maybe punching a bunch of holes in the wall and having an air conditioner in every room by school start, but I realistically said I don't think that will be possible.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure, unless there's any other questions. I'd like to move to approve the 5-year capital improvement plan as presented.
I'll second.
Mr. Pollock with a motion and Mr. Ewart with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Thank you, Mr. Pollock. Anything else?
That is all.
Okay, moving on to finance. Mr. Lowe.
Yes, Finance Committee met 2 weeks ago. Same evening, Building Committee met. We approved the vouchers for months of August and September. Brittany gave us an ESSER dollar update, and in there was the improvement to indoor air quality that I just mentioned. Brittany gave her variance report, and revenues have decreased slightly because of we lost the declining enrollment exemption. Then there is Brittany also went through the fund balance reconciliation, and our goal was to boost the fund balance by $250,000. We ended up with a total increase of $958,000, but I want it noted that shortly this evening, we will be hopefully approving a temporary loan to meet operating expenses and so on for the rest of the year. We're going to have a shortfall at the end of October. So it's not like that $958K isn't spoken for already. Our fund balance is too small, and our goal is to boost the fund balance. And I believe that some of that $958K is spoken for, not just for fund balance boosting. I don't know exactly, I don't remember just what it is. I don't want to say, I don't know if you want to say, Brittany, could use some help on that one?
Sure. So the revenue, some of the things are expenses that we expensed the prior year, but DPI doesn't give us the revenue till the next year. So we would have spent and decreased our fund balance the previous year, knowing we were getting the revenue this year. So that's pretty much of a wash. Other ones we received is we received additional state aid this last year. Part of it was used towards technology or the phone system that we just put in place. And then the other one was the reading or literature, reading curriculum that we're going through an audit for, so that's designated funds. And then we did receive Kids Get Ahead grant, which is also designated. So you're getting funds that are being spent in the next year, but they're already designated, so we can't spend them on other things. Also, the $250,000, that is our goal every year to add to our fund balance. So it's not just, we're not just adding $1 million to our fund balance.
Right, I believe we did make the goal, or we did
We did.
not? We did,
Mhm.
okay, good, very good. Okay, moving on. Next is the 4K reading curriculum, and I will move to approve with a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee to approve the purchase of the Learning Without Tears Get a Set for School Curriculum Kits for a total not to exceed $21,062.53. The purchase will be funded by the 4K grant.
I'll second.
Nope, doesn't require a
That comes from the Finance
second.
Committee. A positive recommendation does not require a second. Any discussion? I'll say, Mr. Ryder, I appreciate, or Dr. Ryder, I appreciate you giving us information on this and letting us dig into the curriculum. That was helpful as well. Appreciate it.
Yep, actually, Mr. Miziak, and he will make sure in future run through Teaching and Learning Committee. This is a continuation of curriculum that you've approved previously, but it's always good to review that and look at that.
Absolutely, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Okay, next item from Finance is the CISA 1 2022-2023 contract. This is to approve the CISA 1 contract for the year mentioned. Funding source is IDEA flow-through. I'm sorry, I believe on the night of finance, I knew what the acronym meant, but I didn't write it down, so I can't tell you at the moment. Anyways, I will move to approve with a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee to approve the CISA 1 contract for the 2022-2023 school year.
That comes with a positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Okay, next item from Finance was the MJ Care 2022-2023 agreement. And this is this is a therapy staffing agreement. I will move to approve with a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee to approve the MJ Care Therapy Staffing Agreement for the 2022-2023 school year for an amount not to exceed $85,000.
That comes with a positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any discussion?
I will mention, this is IDEA flow-through dollars also.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Okay, and last item from Finance is the line of credit with JP Morgan Chase Bank. We will have a shortfall at the end of October, previously mentioned. And I will bring forward to the, I will motion to approve the resolution authorizing a taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory note for the cash flow purposes in an amount not to exceed $6,500,000.
Second.
No, that does not require a second. Oh, yeah, it does.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Both
Thank
with
you.
motion and Mr. Barney with a second. Any discussion?
I-
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just worth mentioning, if our fund balance was where it needed to be, we wouldn't be doing this evening.
I was going to ask Brittany if you could describe why we need that money as a carryover with the taxable reasons. Just a quick explanation for our citizens.
Right, so two times a year, so around now and then around the June. Now is because we don't receive our property taxes until January. Because there's a state aid schedule and then there's a property tax schedule. And if our bills fall or our payroll falls where we don't have those funds yet, which is one of legislation's questions to come again this year in the biennial budget, to change that. Some school districts do reach out to their municipalities and say, hey, can you pay us early? And some don't do that. We currently don't do that now, but I went to a meeting last week that a lot of districts are doing that so they don't have to cash flow borrow. Their periods are smaller than ours. Ours is a longer 3-month period, so they may not be doing that. Theirs is more like a December, January, 3-week to a month period, so it might be more feasible for them. But it is because of the schedule set by the state and the municipalities and when we get to our revenue. So that's why we have to do this. One of the things regarding fund balance is currently our fund balance policy, I believe, says 12%. I am going to do a calculation to see what our fund balance should be so we don't have to borrow. I'm figuring out that 12% is not enough and we would still have to borrow. So in the future, we'd probably bring that to policy to adjust that, to increase it, but once we find out that percentage.
Okay, very good. Thank you,
much.
Brittany.
Anything further?
It's probably worth noting that the request is about $2 million less than
Correct.
last year. So we're moving in the right direction ultimately.
Yes, and this borrow is larger than the one we have in June, so our goal is to reduce June's, and then hopefully next June, we will not have to borrow in June. We are working with some of our vendors to make sure our payments are aligned to where we wouldn't have to borrow again in June. But we're working on that.
Very good. Mr. Stoddard.
And I'll just comment that there's been discussion on the fund balance, and we had a healthy fund balance, and we're growing our fund balance back again to a healthy fund balance. Previous boards made intentional decisions to use dollars out of the fund balance for infrastructure improvements, for safety improvements at MacArthur, to buy 2 homes, raise those homes, for much-needed parking lot improvements, to build an expansion over at Rockfield, to do some other improvements, to buy land, I believe, over at Amy Bell, to support the improvements there. So we made a conscious decision, intentional decision, to take dollars out of the fund balance with minimal impact to the taxpayer. So I applaud previous boards for doing that, but now we're in a position where we need to grow that fund balance, and this board will do that. So, thank you.
Anything further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
And that's it for finance this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Item 8, Policy Committee. Amanda?
No.
Or Tom?
Oh, Tom, I'm sorry.
All right.
Just wished.
I've got a lot of updates, so, sit back, kick your feet up. This could be a while. Policy Committee met last week to go through the latest updates from Neola and a few changes that the committee members desired. For the record, we discussed policies 0161, 1213, 1421, 2260.02, 2414, 2460.03, 2522, 2700.01, 3120.04, 3121, 3213, 3425, 4120.04, 4121, 4213, 4425, 5113, 5340, 5517.01, not done yet, 5900, 7217, 7440.01, 8146, bless you, and 8740. All right, so that's the policies that we discussed. I will give you some highlights of some of the changes that are included. In policy 1421, along with its counterparts, which are 3121 and 4121, that's our criminal history and employee self-reporting policy. There's an amendment saying that any moving violation must be reported if the employee drives or operates a district vehicle or piece of mobile equipment or transports students or staff in any vehicle. Policy 2414, which is our human growth and development policy. The big change here is that the board directs that students shall not receive instruction in human growth and development. The board directs students shall receive age-appropriate personal health instruction that does not violate or enact Wisconsin State Statute 118.019, and the proposed changes also give parents the opportunity to inspect the personal health program. Policy 2522 is our library media centers policy. The big change here is that we will look to have a searchable catalog of all materials available to students, and that catalog will be made available from our district website. Changes to policy 5900, which is the transgender students policy. Changes include that the district will include a student's parents or guardians in discussions with the student that relate to the student's transgender status, and also that the district and its employees shall address all students by their legal name and utilize pronouns associated with the student's biological sex unless authorized in writing by the student's parent or guardian. And the last policy to highlight is 7217, which is our weapons policy. The changes in this section include, in addition to allow qualified law enforcement officers with current HR 218 certified carry card if approved by the board. There's also a change for the exceptions that were previously listed for knives. There were already multiple instances where knives were allowed. As part of these changes, a standard pocket knife would be allowed if it's blade length of 3 inches or less. It is important to point out that there is a separate policy that pertains to students, and no changes are being proposed for the student weapons policy. I want to thank Board Members Soderberg and Ewert for their suggestions and contributions to these updates.
I have some questions, just
Sure.
two, actually. One, policy 7217A, was that vetted by our legal team?
Yes, this afternoon I spoke with legal counsel. The language in A does pan out, as well as there's great research around that language. There was a recommendation for letter F that the line subject to Wisconsin State Statute 948.61 be added, because that would mean that if said person carrying a knife with those specifications moved forward to use it in a violent manner, we're already cross-referenced with other policy, but it was just advised by legal as strong language so that if someone were to read this, they understand that that knife cannot be used as a weapon in those instances.
Can you list that statute one more time?
Yep, Wisconsin State Statute 948.61.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, it's referenced down below in legal, but just to spell it out within the language and policy was the recommendation.
So then my next question is more clarification. This policy is not for our students, but for whom to carry a pocket knife?
Let me pull up 7217 so I can clarify.
I got it right here if you want to see it. But the 7,000s, are those in general typically, Dr. Reuter, are those typically for general public?
General public, they're
General
not, they don't
public.
fall within the support staff or,
Okay.
staff or student policy
So
range.
staff, student, support staff will continue to not be allowed to carry, and I think I said student, right? Will not be allowed to carry a pocket knife? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. But this, they're allowed to carry a pocket knife on our premises
Correct.
for the general public?
Yes.
Okay. That doesn't seem like a safety concern to anybody?
Pocket knives are not dangerous weapons.
Until they are.
No, they're not.
So you're
A
telling
three-inch-
me
a
that
three-inch
somebody
bl-
couldn't
A
stab you in the eye
three-inch
with
blade
that?
on a folding pocket knife is not considered a dangerous weapon.
I don't know if I would make that bold of a statement that it's not a dangerous weapon. It could obviously be used as a dangerous weapon. We're not amending this for the student side, we're amending this for the staff side of this. So was my understanding.
Staff? I thought we just said staff will not be allowed to have this.
I apologize, and I misunderstood that.
I guess that's the clarification I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of, right? This is not changing for students or staff. They cannot carry a pocket knife, but then we're allowing communities, or the community members to carry one while on school
Yeah,
grounds.
we didn't specifically review the policy for students or staff during the meeting.
And I'll just say that it's more making an accommodation for moms and dads that have something in a pocket knife in their purse, or in their purse, on their keychain. You can't get through TSA, and I think that's wrong. I mean, I've got a Mont Blanc pen here. When the point's out, this definitely is a dangerous weapon. We've got scissors in our schoolrooms that are dangerous weapons. It's more making accommodations for folks that have something in their pocket that we trust, that are moms and dads, that are trusted individuals that can carry that. I don't think it's a big deal, and in fact, I would have no problem expanding this to include staff. We do make accommodations. It's not an accommodation in the current policy today. There's an accommodation for our food service staff. There's an accommodation for tradespeople to come in that have cutting tools in their toolbox. So we have that in the four walls of our schools today. We're just making an accommodation for someone that wants to have a Boy Scout knife in their pocket. And we were very specific in terms of on the length of the knife. I mean, I hope we're not going to go down the path of banning a writing instrument like this or scissors in our schools, which I think is totally stupid. But this could be a dangerous weapon in the right hands, so.
And that's kind of where I was going to go with the rest of my comment. There are a lot of items in the world that can be used as, quote, a dangerous weapon if the intent is placed behind it. We're making accommodations, like you said, for the parent that comes in, happens to be coming off the job site and has a utility knife in their pocket and forgets it, or whatever happens in those types of scenarios. I don't think that's an unreasonable amendment.
And I don't think, as a security professional, I don't think this is in any way going to increase risk to our kids, to our schools at all. Or I wouldn't have supported it.
I will concur with what everybody's saying, and I was a little frustrated by the weapons policy, the way it was written. It gets a little convoluted, I'll say, when you look at what a weapon is, and they try and describe what a weapon is. I mean, you could easily, like Bob said, you could define a pen as a weapon in the wrong hands. A baseball bat would be a great weapon in the wrong hands, and we have baseball teams, and we have baseball bats on our facility. You know, how far do you take this? It becomes a very difficult conversation moving forward, so I understand where you're all coming from.
And I think if we use common sense, we'll always go down the right path.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Mr. Lowe?
So are we going to include staff in the future in this? It seems reasonable that a staff member.
That's something that policy committee can certainly consider, or even the board could probably consider tonight based on action for policies.
Yeah, I would recommend that we have that through policy committee and vet that further, and then talk with legal as far as liability with our workforce and what that may or may not entail.
I would agree. So do we have a motion?
Yeah, policy committee brings forward a motion with a positive recommendation to approve the edits as presented and/or discussed, the revisions that were discussed, revisions that were discussed by the committee, including 5900 and 7217.
That does not require a second. Any discussion further?
Yes. I will make a motion to edit that motion to include in 7217, item F, add subject to Wisconsin statute 948.61.
Okay. Do we accept the friendly amendment?
Sure.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Anything
All right,
further?
nothing further from policy committee.
Thank you, Mr. Browning. Moving on to item 9, new business. Item A, school security, discussion and action to approve a draft job description for school security officer, SSO, along with next steps. Dr. Ryder, you want to
Yeah,
kick it off?
Mr. Soderberg has brought forward a proposed job description this evening to discuss and possibly act on, as well as next steps regarding our school safety security officer. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Soderberg.
Yeah, thank you, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for everyone's comments and public comments tonight. I'll start off with that this supports our school resolution, safety resolution that the board passed on July 18, and also which was supports my comments in open session on June 27 at the school board meeting. And for those that have not viewed both of those sessions, I would encourage you to take the time and review both of those sessions, and you'll get more clarity in terms of why we're doing what we're doing. Saying that, I was in Michigan a couple weeks ago at my granddaughter's 4th birthday party, and Clarkston, Michigan is adjacent to a town called Oxford, and Oxford had a school shooting last year. I was talking to a couple parents there, and if I would share with them what a constituent stated in public comments, that there's no rush to do this, they would look at me, because they're a community just like Germantown, where we think everything is hunky-dory until it's not. It can't happen here. It will never happen here. They had the same mindset, and guess what? It happened there. Not unlike what happened in Uvalde, Texas, which is why I made my comments on June 27. It's going to happen again, and God forbid that it happens here, which is why I applaud Mr. Barney for putting the school resolution together and for this full board to sign off on it and send it to our governor, our attorney general, and all the state legislators, because we have to do more. We've got a wonderful program here, a very mature program. We spend significant dollars here on our safety and security program. I'm very proud of that, because I was part of that. This board was, and previous boards. We've got a wonderful relationship with Germantown Police Department, the Washington County Sheriff's Department, both of which are aware of what we're talking about tonight. I had conversation with Chief Snow several times on this initiative. It would supplement their school resource officers. not replace them, but it'll be just another layer of defense that will ensure that our kids and our teachers go home safe. Even though we've got a wonderful program here, it can happen here. It can happen here. I hope it never happens here. But our job is to provide additional tools in our toolbox to ensure that we do all we can to ensure that we look at everything and plug some holes, identify the opportunities to ensure that we've got the best-in-class safety security program. We've got wonderful schools here. We've got wonderful buildings. We've got good school report cards. Our town is growing. What better way to add value to our value proposition by having the best school safety program in the state of Wisconsin? And this is just this is just one of many things that this board will be talking about. So last week I teed up a couple things. One would be a modification to the weapons policy, which I'm pleased that the board just passed that tonight, and also floating out a draft school security officer position, which is a little pivot from what we had in the safety or the school safety resolution that Mr. Barney put together. I believe we called it a school security aide. I went on to, believe it or not, I just Googled a job description for a school security officer. I found one, and there's a typo in the job description that I think we're going to have to pull out because it identifies a particular state that I'm not really fond of. But I looked at this job description. I did a lot of wordsmithing to it. I put a lot of different, I added a lot of different tasks, a lot of different qualifications that supports HR 218. And why do we want HR 218? Well, HR 218 identifies, it's a federal law, but specific to HR 218, it mandates a whole bunch of things from a vetting standpoint, because you just don't want to have a qualified former law enforcement officer walking in the four walls of your schools carrying a gun. We want to have someone that has gone through that vetting, i.e. through HR 218, that mandates that they've been a former law enforcement officer for 10 years, that they're a qualified medical professional, ensures that they're qualified to carry a gun and to possess a gun. There's nothing from a federal standpoint that prohibits them from possessing a gun. They do a background check. And most importantly, there's a qualification every 12 months. So they would have to qualify on the range to carry that gun. So that's part of our vetting requirements. That will minimize our risk if we have an individual carrying a firearm. So saying all that, I put together a job description just to tee it up for conversation. And yes, this did not go through the Personnel Committee. It's one of those things where, getting back to the constituents' comments, there is no rush to do this. And I would disagree with that. I think that's a disingenuous comment. I think that supports a lack of knowledge in this space. And again, I encourage that individual and others to view the video from June and July so you'll understand why the board is going down this path. Because I don't want it to happen here, but it can happen here. So I put together this job description just to get some conversation going. That job description was out to the full board last week, and no one commented on it. So I welcome conversation here. I would have no problem with it going back to personnel. I put some pricing in from a cost standpoint of $20 per hour, $25 per hour, and you're looking at, for $20 per hour for a whole school year, $28,000 to fund this position. $25 an hour, $35,000 for a whole year, not including any benefits, of course. And if the board doesn't have dollars for that this year, I'm fully confident that the community will donate dollars to fund a position of something like this, whether it be at the high school or the Kennedy Middle School. And that's not to say that this position can't go back and forth. Can't go to the high school, the middle school, the grade schools, that type of thing. And it will support and complement the SRO position. And we don't know who this position will report to. My only assumption would be it would report to the building principal, that type of thing. But that will be vetted down the road through personnel. I mean, it's not going to report to the chief of police, not at all. But, we'll take our due diligence to vet this, but I just wanted to tee up the job description for conversation tonight, because I think it's the right thing to do. And I would say there is a rush to do this. This is one of those low-hanging fruit, not really low-hanging fruit, this is watermelon in the fields that we're stumbling over. It's one of those things where, why not do this right away? It's something that we can do right away. And referencing technology that a constituent mentioned tonight, the technology that I'm looking at is, believe it or not, at the Potawatomi Casino, downtown Milwaukee. Evolve technology. It's a wonderful technology that detects firearms. Could it work here? It sure can work here. And that's something that I'm looking at, and once I do some more due diligence, I will share my research with the board. So, but for tonight, I just want to tee up the conversation on the draft school security officer position. Spent a lot of time working on it, except for that one typo that you found, Brian, and I apologize for that. But I would tee it up for conversation. And nothing's to say that we have to approve it tonight. I would love for us to approve it tonight with possible further vetting at the Personnel Committee in partnership with HR to identify dollars for it. We know that our budget's very tight. We understand that. But does this have to be a full-time position? Could it be a position where maybe less than part-time? We go for maybe 10 hours a week, just to take baby steps, just to mature the position, to get the bugs out of the position, and then we could reassess the position for the upcoming school year. So there's a lot of things we could do. So I just wanted to tee it up for conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions, comments? Mr. Ewert.
Just looking at it from a law enforcement perspective, the language in here there's some really good stuff. I do have a fundamental question in regards to enforcing laws, regulations, and respond to emergency situations. Obviously, respond to emergency situations. Regulations on the legal side would leave me a little confused as to directly what we're referring to, and then enforcing laws. So would we, to the point of the citizen that did talk, are we attempting to build a private law enforcement agency or a security officer? In which case, I would say maybe not enforce laws, but investigate, report, and document violations of laws, and then instead of regulations, I would say municipal ordinance violations. Just on a legal side in my head. And one other, and I'm struggling to find it right now, it didn't highlight for me, but I believe there was a description in here in regards to, I don't want to say it was eliminate, I apologize, in regards to responding to life-threatening situations. And if I have a second, I'll find it. But my recommendation on that would be we would use some law enforcement terminology once again, which is to stop the threat. We don't look to eliminate. We don't look to end somebody's life. We look to stop the threat. That's our legal explanation. So, just my two thoughts as I was perusing it.
Amanda.
I have several things. I think the first and foremost thing is I don't have a problem with creating a job, if you will, to help keep our students safe. What I have concerns about is the way we're doing this. There are so many questions out there, right, that we don't have answers to. This wasn't fully vetted through Chief Snow. He wasn't aware of the actual job description and all of that information. This wasn't vetted through legal. Our administration team hasn't had a look at it all together to have the conversation. There's just so many questions that we need answered, and we should have those answers before we approve a job. Obviously, one, the funds. We know that we are tight when it comes to money, so you can say, and by all means, if the community wants to donate, fantastic, fine, wonderful, but we can't keep spending money we don't have. Our job is to be fiscally responsible. We can't go out there and say, well, we want this job, we're gonna find the money, figure it out, go figure it out, Brittany. That's not the way this works, because we have to have the money before we can approve a job.
That's not necessarily true. We have to have the money before we authorize the recruitment and the placement of the job. We can approve a job description without having any money for it. There's nothing to say that once we approve a job tonight, that we're gonna go out and fill that position.
But then what's the point of rushing that?
So we have the position so that we could go if not now, when? Are we going to wait until we've got dollars in the budget next year, $35,000 to fund a position?
What is wrong with going through the proper channels that we're typically supposed to go through, that administration has had a look and vetted everything, again, legal has vetted everything, so we're coming to the community with a very well-rounded job description and an opportunity here for a new job. Like, just put all our ducks in a row. Cart before horse.
That was the language I was actually going to just use, cart before the horse or chicken and the egg. Either way, I think a starting point has to happen. We can start with a general idea of what that job description is, and then move through those channels. What does our legal team think of a job description such as this and the implications it would have on all numerous things, insurance policies, liability, all sorts of things. But if we don't start with a concept or an idea, and I think the job description is a great framework for that, to start all those conversations, I think we're kind of wandering in the woods, I guess.
And we have that, right? We have this document right in front of us. Does it need to be approved in order for us to move forward? I don't think so.
And I think I said that in my opening statement, that the board can do whatever the board wants to do, to include have it further vetted by personnel and HR. I have no problem with that.
If I could add, I did speak with Chief Snow this morning a little bit about this job description, so he was aware. We were on a call for various reasons. He did share with me that the Hartford School District, I believe just the Union High School, does have a school security or non-SRO that they just started this year. So I was going to reach out to them tomorrow to learn more about that position and what that looks like at their school district as a start. Those individuals, however, are not concealed carry, but they are retired police law enforcement, just to speak to them. I would also advise that as we think about this job description, sitting down with both Washington County and Germantown Police Department to talk about that relationship and what that looks like, that may lead to language in a approved job description, as well as build out a hiring process, include our high school and middle school administrative team to just kind of talk through what maybe some of the gaps or areas that they could see this helping to fill, and then thinking about a funding source long-term as well. I know the sentiment of we want to be fiscally responsible, and also there's the possibility of donation. I often look at donations from the standpoint of it's great to get a donation for something, but that might be just the upfront cost, and then we incur those costs down the road. So we have to look at the scope of that. Mr. Soderberg, I like the idea of, phased-in approach as well when we think about funding and what that looks like, building a budget in future years. So I think there's many things to consider that then the starting point here would help us through a personnel committee or back to the full board for further discussion and approval. That would be my recommendation from the administrative team.
And I'll just say that from a vetting standpoint, from a transparency standpoint, last week I did reach out to Chief Snow. He's fully aware of this position because we did reference HR 218. I did reach out to the Washington County District Attorney's Office. They're fully aware of, or at least the person I spoke with is aware of what we're doing. And I don't know, Russ, did you have other conversations with other agencies that you want to comment on tonight, or no?
Nothing in high-level detail as regard to it, but just the concept that this was a discussion in the board.
Did you guys discuss this and create this document?
Pardon me?
Did you two discuss and create this document?
No.
Oh.
First time I saw this was when it was sent for everyone's.
I would recommend too, this is a great why and starting point, and then for our families, our community, we have to be very clear on the how and what this looks like. So I would recommend too that through administration and possibly personnel committee, working with board members, we develop that how and that communication plan to families and the greater Germantown community, so that if we do move forward with a hire, everyone knows why that person's that here's the why, but what does that look like every day for kids, staff, and other employees?
Yeah, I'm looking at this as a draft agenda, and if we approve it as a draft agenda, there's things in here that I would want to change. And I think Russ has commented on that. There's things that need to be tweaked in this job description, and I agree with that. We're not approving the position at this point, just a job description. I think a lot more due diligence needs to be done, and I think the Washington County, the Germantown Police Department, all need to be involved along with administration and our principals and staff to vet this and make sure that we're doing this absolutely above board and correctly, and make sure that everybody understands what and why we're doing this. And I think we can do that rather quickly. I don't think this is something that's going to take a long time, but I think if we do it properly, this is a good thing for our community, a good thing for our safety in schools, and maybe very necessary. You know, we don't know. We know that things are happening in school districts, and I agree with Bob. It could happen here. To say that it'll never happen here, I think is very irresponsible. So I think we can move forward with this, and I think the support is for us to have as much as best security possible, and I think everybody wants that, and I think our community wants that. So as far as a draft job description, I guess I'm okay with that. So, Mr. Pollock.
So when I read through this and read the recommendation, I looked at this as truly the first step, that this is a framework in which we can start these discussions. I mean, I like the idea. I mean, I know it was alluded to that it would be middle school, high school. I mean, if we can also accommodate something at the elementary schools, because, yes, to Scott's point, we have people there that we know we could 100% trust, and that's not, I never ever looked at it in this way. It's more of adding, our whole resolution was to look at trying to add additional, not new, not replacement, but additional mitigation. And that's exactly what this piece is. So I have plenty of questions, but it's not quite the forum yet, right? This is the first time we're talking through this. I mean, the fact is when I looked at this, and once again, I've said this before, as uncomfortable as it may be for me to have 3 kids, one at the high school, one at the middle, and one at the elementary school, to say this, we cannot assume it's not going to happen here. That is the wrong approach to it. And so knowing that we're in that uncomfortable position, when I look at this and see that we have a laundry list of specific responsibilities, when I look at qualifications, I think there's 21 items listed, and there's no way in heck I'd probably make it past, well, I wouldn't make it past the first one. The fact that there's at least a handful of various license or certificate minimum requirements, that takes a lot of people out of the equation, and so it leaves people who have done this for a living. So in that regard, when I look at it that way, from the board perspective, and honestly from a parent perspective, there's a level of comfort that this isn't just saying, do you have a concealed carry? Okay, come on in, and maybe you can work for us. I think too is just part of the next steps besides various conversations to be had is we need to create and start to work on an FAQ for this, because there will be plenty of questions along the way. Whether we assume that we're going to start with a goal of, assuming it makes it through all of the vetting, if we start with 2, people are going to say, what about me? What about my kid? That's going to be a question. I've won at each level. So that would be a question for me is, if we're covering the high school and the middle school with an additional resource, what about my kid at the elementary school? What's part of that plan? So I've never looked at this as we're moving forward, we're going to sign off, let's get someone in that position. But this is, in my opinion, this is the way to start moving this conversation forward, because how else would you do it without this list of these are the different things that we'd be looking for in a qualified individual. These are the things that, at least as a starting point, we would be asking of that qualified individual.
Anything further? Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, I think the motion here to approve the draft description is perfect. It's simple. There was no mention of hiring somebody or approving a position, so I think we're good to go ahead with this. There was an awful lot of reading over the weekend with 106 pages total to the agenda. I only read it once, and it seemed to me like there was some duplication of text, so I'd have to read it several more times, but I think we're good with the draft that we have. Other commentary I'd like to make is I did not consider this anything against the Germantown Police Department. That thought hadn't even crossed my mind, so I was kind of surprised when a citizen mentioned that tonight. The other thing is, I don't know if the citizens of this school district get it or not, but we cannot send Germantown, we cannot hire Germantown SROs for Amy Bell or Rockfield. They're not in the Germantown jurisdiction. We could hire Washington County Sheriff SROs, but we can't send Germantown Police in there. So previously, I had talked to Brittany about possible funding for an additional SRO for the 2 grade schools that we do have control of, but you know, that hasn't gone anywhere so far, so you can see that we're not actually rushing ahead with anything. We're kind of moving along kind of slowly, I think, here. So anyway, reading this, I was very happy to see it. Thank you, Bob, for doing this work. I think it's a possible way of getting this done. And certainly it's a way of handling the grade schools, including Amy Bell and Rockfield, since Germantown doesn't have jurisdiction there. So I'd be fine going ahead with this evening, and knowing that it's a draft, there are going to be changes made to it. It's that simple.
Mr. Browning?
Yeah, when I read through this, I immediately thought of someone that could help with Amy Bell and Rockfield. As Mr. Loth mentioned, they're not covered by Germantown Police Department, and I recently heard from a presentation by the sheriff that there's not as many sheriffs out on patrol as you might think. Maybe single digits covering the entire county. So it could take a long time for someone to respond to Amy Bell or to Rockfield if there was an incident.
There is a referendum on the ballot to add sheriffs to Washington County.
I'm aware of that. Yeah, so that's what came to mind initially when I read through this. I appreciate Board Member Soderberg bringing this forward. I think it's a great start, and the administration's recommendation that we should discuss it with the Sheriff's Department and Germantown Police Department, maybe to help confirm what the job description would be. I think that makes sense. I think it would be best, as it was mentioned, to maybe send it through Policy Committee and let them do that vetting.
Personnel.
Or you can take it again, you know, personnel, not policy. Maybe both.
Just to piggyback on some of those comments, so that presentation in regards to the referendum, I believe is where he's getting that information from. In that, there's a couple of stats that are important to note. Currently, officer per 1,000 people in regards to the sheriffs, I believe, is about 1.5, and Germantown is 1.6. Those are number 1 and number 2 dead last in the county. And when we're talking about response times matter, and I'm not saying that this is not a knock on our police department, because we have a fantastic police department and a great sheriff's office. That should speak volumes to why, yes, with due diligence, but with some sense of urgency, we start working through this. There is a referendum. They may get increased staffing, they may not get increased staffing, but once again, we have 2 schools outside the purview of the Germantown Police Department. And I would assume the amount of times the sheriffs are in those schools probably coincides with DARE instruction days. So, my 2 cents from some of the presentations that I've seen.
Very good. Mr. Wolf?
I just wanted to mention, I drive by Amy Bell often. sometimes during the week, sometimes on weekends. And I see a sheriff's car sitting in there in the parking lot on school days and also on weekends when school is not in session. So I would like to thank the Washington County Sheriffs for spending a fair amount of time, I believe, at least in the Amy Bell School parking lot. I'm not saying they have to be in the school. I think just being in the parking lot is important. They're there.
Very good. Anything further?
I'll make a motion.
I'll entertain a motion.
And before I make the motion, I will say that, to Russ's, your comments about response time, I agree with that, but I will say that if there is a call on the air for an active shooter, Free Mutual Aid, you will get everybody and anybody from a law enforcement agency responding to that particular school. From Menominee Falls, from all the surrounding schools or neighbors, they will come and help us. So I'll make a motion to approve the draft job description for school security officer and send back to personnel for further vetting. That would include conversations with appropriate law enforcement agencies as well as legal.
Second.
Mr. Ebert, second. Mr. Sadberg makes a motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Thank you, Mr. Sadberg.
You're welcome.
Item B, discussion and action to approve 2022-2023 teacher resignations. Mr. Noah.
Thank you. Stephanie Steiner has submitted her letter of resignation effective September 15th, 2022. Stephanie was hired in August of 2012 to teach family and consumer science at Kennedy Middle School. We ask that you approve the recommendation, or the resignation as noted.
I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the resignation of Stephanie Steinert and thank her for her service to our students, their families, and the Germantown School District.
Second.
Reineman and Mr. Pollock with a second. Any discussion? Mr. Love.
Do we need any further discussion on?
No, we don't. There is a question relative to liquidated damages, which my recommendation would be that we, considering when we've received some information, that we pursue that at a different time.
Oh, not this evening. Okay, very good.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Moving on to item C, discussion and action to approve 2022-2023 teacher contracts. Mr. Noah.
Thank you. We have 3 contracts to bring forward. First, Rebecca Lewandowski, special education at Kennedy Middle School. This is a 1.0 limited term, 179-day contract for $51,310. Next is Dana Jondal, special education at County Line. This is a 1.0 limited term for $40,000. And finally, Amy Heller is a 4K kindergarten teacher at Amy Bell. This, I would like to make an adjustment. This is actually a 0.5 FTE, thus the amount of $24,250. We'd ask that you approve the contracts as noted with the adjustment of Amy Heller's contract to 0.5.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as stated with the modification.
Second.
Mr. Soderberg with motion, Mr. Loth with the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Moving on to item D, discussion and action to approve overnight travel and field trip. Dr. Ryder.
Yes, we have a request from Mr. Brooks, from the high school, Germantown High School Choir Director. He's requesting that the board approve travel to Camp Whitcomb Mason in Heartland on November 5th through the 6th. This is part of time that the club will spend learning and rehearsing Requiem, and that all of the expenses are paid through transportation, lodging, and meals through the music club, so there wouldn't be a funding source. It's just the approval of that overnight travel.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the overnight travel request for the Germantown High School choir students and chaperones to travel to Camp Whitcomb Mason in Heartland, Wisconsin from November 5th, 2022 through November 6th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Hebert?
Tracy?
Pollock? Okay. Ryan with the motion, Pollock with the second. Do we have discussion?
No, just I'm very excited for them because I got to do this at Germantown High School, and it is not travel away. We actually, our choir director taught us, so it's an unbelievable thing to be able to sing, so good luck to them and have fun.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Moving on to item D, discussion and action to approve donations. Dr. Reuter.
Yes, we have two donations this evening. The first for the $3,650 donation to from Das Barrel Room for the Early Childhood Program to use at their discretion. And the second donation from Tom and Lisa Barney to fund the purchase of Narcan in each of our buildings. So I'd ask the board for approval of those donations.
Excellent. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the generous donations and thank our donors.
Second.
Ryan with the motion, Pollock with the second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Barney and his wife Lisa for going down that path on Narcan. I know we talked about this at the board and through our district nurse. And we know it can happen here in the middle school, but no one ever thought it could happen at elementary school. So I applaud you for having that thought leadership, and also, Mike, you for bringing it up for the board. So Mike, or for Tom, thank you very much.
Yeah, it was brought up that it can be procured for free for the high school, and this will cover having a dose at each of our other schools.
Excellent.
So thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Ryan and Mr. Barney with the second. Any discussion?
What if we want to stay?
You're welcome to stay.
No,
but
that's
we're
okay.
going-
I thought everyone was going over to Das Barrel Room.
Yeah,
now.
I think we need to. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. It is 8:36. Thank you all for coming. Drive home safely.